Jaworek School. It's me, Ms. McNichol. Welcome to episode number 12 of Goodnight Jaworek School. I have a special book to share with you today. It was actually given to Ms. Capadonna and I by the author. And she gave it to us because her daughter, Amelia, was in our class many years ago in second grade. The book is called When You Take a Pig to a Party. And some crazy things will happen when that pig goes to a party. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's book. When You Take a Pig to a Party by Christina Thermanius McCleary and Myra McCleary. Pictures by Marjorie Wunsch. For Amelia. This little girl is Adelaide, and her pig beside her is Sherman. Adelaide and Sherman do lots of things together. They swing on the tire swing hanging from the black oak tree. They slide down the hay pile in the barn, and they like a good game of horseshoes after supper. Adelaide has always said that Sherman is the dearest, sweetest, most wonderful, and best behaved pig in the world. So of course she thought it would be okay to take him to Ethan's birthday party, especially since she gave Sherman a bath, sprinkled some of her mother's best perfume on him, and tied her father's polka dot bow tie around his neck. Things did go just dandy at first. Sherman loved musical chairs, and even one pinned the tail on the donkey. But then Adelaide got so carried away watching Marlin the Magician that she forgot to keep an eye on Sherman. So before she knew it, Sherman was in the flower garden, munching away, and when Ethan's dad saw Sherman, he bellowed, "There's a pig in our peonies!" And Adelaide and Ethan and all the children took off after Sherman, yelling, "Stop, Sherman, stop!" But Sherman, thinking that they wanted to play chase, started running in circles, bumping into Ethan's daddy, sending popcorn swirling like a January blizzard, which startled Sherman, who ran between Marlin the Magician's legs, causing the rabbit just popping out of Marlin's hat to land ker-plop on Sherman's back. Which astonished Sherman so much that he scampered through a hole under the fence to where the McKinneys were having a barbecue. In fact, Sherman was running so fast he didn't even see the McKinney swimming pool until he landed ker-splat right in it. And the McKinneys and all their guests roared, "There's a pig in the pool!" And Adelaide and Ethan and all the children chased after Sherman, hollering, "Stop, Sherman, stop!" But Sherman didn't stop. Instead, he ker-splashed across the pool, scrambled out, and squeezed through a loose plank into Mrs. Primrose's yard. And before Adelaide could get a word out, Sherman was heading through the open door into Mrs. Primrose's house, where she was hosting a bridge club luncheon. "Eek! There's a pig in my parlor!" shrieked Mrs. Primrose. Whereupon Cassandra, Mrs. Primrose's cat, so dismayed to see a pig in her house, took a flying leap and landed ker-blunk on Sherman's back, and Adelaide and Ethan and all the children with muddy clothes and muddy feet tramped through Mrs. Primrose's parlor crying, "Stop, Sherman, stop!" But Sherman was already in the next yard, where Mrs. Hayden was painting her flower boxes. And when Mr. Hayden stuck his head out of the window to see what the commotion was all about, he tipped a pot of geraniums into a bucket of paint, sending paint splattering over everything and everybody. Mrs. Hayden squealed, "There's a pig in our paint!" And Adelaide and Ethan and all the children with muddy clothes and muddy feet and paint in their hair and on their best party clothes shouted, "Stop, Sherman! Stop!" But Sherman simply could not stop. Instead, he darted across the street where Mr. Whipple was watering his lawn. And when Mr. Whipple turned in surprise, he sprayed water all over Mr. and Mrs. Rice, who were just coming home from the bakery. And that, of course, caused them to throw up their hands in despair, sending donuts ker-plunking, ker-crumbling all over the sidewalk. Adelaide and Ethan and all the children scurried over Mr. Whipple's lawn, screaming, "Stop, Sherman! Stop!" And finally, at long last, Sherman stopped to eat the donuts, of course. But just as Adelaide was about to grab Sherman by his bow tie, Mr. and Mrs. Rice howled, "There's a pig in our pastry!" Which gave Sherman such a fright he took off again, heading straight for Lucy Marple, who was coming down the street on her brand new skateboard. "Help! There's a pig in my path!" Lucy hollered. Adelaide and Ethan and all the children called out at the top of their lungs, "Jump, Lucy! Jump off!" But when Lucy jumped off her skateboard, it did a backflip and landed ker-plunk under Sherman's feet, which sent Sherman careening toward Ethan's yard, where Ethan's mother was putting the candles on the prettiest, yummiest, most delicious, most scrumptious-looking birthday cake you ever saw. And Adelaide and Ethan and all the children wailed, "Oh, no, not the cake!" And they yelled and hollered and screamed and shrieked and cried and shouted and begged, "Stop, Sherman, please stop!" And ker-smack, ker-bash, ker-boom, he did. So, if you ask Adelaide, she'll tell you you never know what will happen when you take a pig to a party. Especially if his name is Sherman. The end. I hope you enjoyed this funny pig story. Now let's look at some other silly videos and pictures of pigs in action. Goodnight Jaworek School, colored by Darcys Coloring. And Darcy is in 4th grade at Jaworek School. Late in the evening on Hosmer Street, where all the cool kids have been tapping a beat, they'll lay in their beds, not one of them a fool, when we all say goodnight to Jaworek School. We go to class and learn something new. We chat with our friends and our teachers too. We share our school spirit, we share what we know, then just after 3 o'clock it's time to go. In Jaworek School, at the end of the day, when all of the students have gone home to play, we close all the windows and put down our tools as we say good night to Jaworek School. Good night to the teachers, good night to the halls, good night to the artwork hanging on the walls. Good night to the books and our principals too. Good night to JJ dressed all in blue. Good night to the gym where we climb and run. Good night to the playscape where we have fun. Good night to the numbers. Good night to the words. Good night to all of the stories we heard. In Jaworek School, at the end of the day, when all of the students have gone home to play, we close all the windows and put down our tools as we say good night to Jaworek School. I hope you enjoyed Darcys Coloring. Remember, anybody can pick up a Goodnight Jaworek School coloring book, color it in, and turn it into room 128, and it'll be here on the show. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. See you next time. Good night, Jaworek School.